What is up, everybody? We are back. This is Hold Down the Fort, Season 2, here with your NFL season preview. We're kicking off the NFL season content right here. You know, preseason's wrapping up. We've got all our stuff in, draft free agency. All that good stuff is over. We've seen the teams play. We've seen the new rosters. So it is time to get talking about this upcoming season. It should be a fun one. Special guest Alex today on the show. This is his first time making an appearance, and he's here to talk some NFL with us. So with that being said, let's get straight into it. First off, we're just gonna kind of share our general thoughts on the season upcoming. I've just said it's exciting to me. We're both Dolphins fans. Obviously, we've been gearing up the roster with Jalen Ramsey, with Teron Armstead last year, Tyreek Hill. We're gearing up. We got a healthy Tua, so that's a healthy outlook for both of us. And but there's a lot of exciting teams around the league this year. There's a lot of parity for the first time in a while. Obviously we look at the Chiefs as maybe being the favorites, but the AFC is beyond loaded. The NFC has some top heavy teams. So what are you looking forward to most this season, Alex?
Well, Sam, I just want to start off by saying that thank you so much for having me on today. I think
Sure.
that this season is probably one of the most exciting that we've had in a while, besides that NFL 100th season that we got just a few years
Yeah.
ago. Obviously, that was the COVID year, so it took a little bit of the hype away from it. But, this season is more than exciting, I want to say, for, even the casual NFL fan. We have a lot of young and old teams competing, to get over that, Super Bowl hump. We've got contenders and pretenders. We even have new management. I mean,
Yeah.
the Washington Commanders just sold for billions of dollars to that Josh Harris-led group. So, it's going to be finally the end of that Dan Snyder era that has, kind of been a nightmare for NFL managers and owners across the league,
Very
just
true.
because of everything that happened with him. But I think that this is going to be a really, really exciting year for everybody, all fans around the league.
I think so. And I think every team has at least one interesting aspect to them, except for Arizona. We'll forget about them. We'll forget about the Cardinals. But other than that, even the bad teams, like if you look at Houston, you got CJ Stroud, you got Willie Anderson, you just took two, you know, high key guys. They could have both, competed for that number one overall spot. So you got that going for the Texans. If you're the Packers, you don't like your outlook, but you've got Jordan Love. Tampa Bay is in a weird spot, but even then, you're competing for Caleb. You still have pieces on the roster, and you don't know what could happen at the trade deadline. Maybe you move some guys, get some more picks. The season becomes even more exciting. And in that weak division, you could always be competing for a playoff spot. So maybe they slip in if Baker plays. But every team, no matter good or bad, like everyone aside from Arizona, really has something to look forward to this season, which I personally love. And with that being said, as we were just saying, the AFC stacked with contenders. NFC has some guys. We're gonna start the pot off with a little game. Basically, I'm just gonna name some teams, and you tell me what do you think, contender, pretender, if you think they're far away or not.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
We'll start over in the AFC. What do you think about the Jaguars? Contender, pretender?
I think that people are sleeping on the Jaguars 100%. I mean, we saw last year one of the best comebacks in NFL playoff history, being down, I believe it was 27-0 to the Chargers at halftime. They came all the way back. They ended up winning that game off of a field goal late. I think that they are actually much closer than we do think to being a contender. I still think that they're a year or two away. They just picked up Calvin Ridley this offseason after being suspended a whole year for the gambling incident. But I think that one or two more years, and we could see the Jaguars really competing for that AFC Championship spot.
I completely agree. I think they're really not even a dark horse. I mean, I guess technically a dark horse. I think there's probably two or three teams that we have ahead of them, but they should certainly be competing again. You look at Trevor Lawrence, his growth should continue. Doug Peterson's a good coach. And then you're right, Calvin Ridley, they pick him up for only a second round pick, which feels somewhat cheap considering he's a young budding star. But I don't know if you've seen any of the videos of him in training camp and preseason, but I mean, he looks like he's here to stay. He's got that speed on him. He's a beast. Obviously, Travis Etienne developing in the background. So well as just other weapons. You got Christian Kirk, all them boys in the receiver core. So you got to like where
Exactly.
Jacksonville is at. Really, I totally agree with you. How about the Jets? How are you feeling about the Jets? I know they've probably been the most talked about team this offseason.
So obviously the Jets probably made the biggest move this offseason in acquiring future NFL Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers. However, this is what I will say about the Jets. Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit biased because I am a Dolphins fan and they do play in our division. So we do see them twice a year, once in Miami and once in New York. However, despite Aaron Rodgers only winning back-to-back MVPs a couple years ago, Rodgers did not look the best last year. Obviously, weapons were much more, weaker, and that offensive skill group was weaker than we have seen in previous years. Devontae Adams left for Oakland, which is now in Las Vegas. We saw a little bit of, like, I guess you could say, yards per carry regression from both AJ
Yeah.
Dillon and Aaron Jones. And that team was riddled with injuries. However, we know what a motivated, competing Aaron Rodgers can do. And now that he's in New York with the likes of Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Mecole Hardman, Breece Hall, recently signed Dalvin Cook, full trust from the head coach, Robert Saleh. He got his OC back. And I believe it was the old Broncos head coach, but
Yeah,
I don't
Nathaniel
remember his
Hackett.
name.
Yeah.
Yes, Nathaniel Hackett. I think that he's going to be very motivated. And actually, you know, three of, I want to say, the top 7 teams in the AFC are in the AFC East. So
Yeah.
that should definitely be a
That's
battle for sure. But I'm going to go ahead and, give benefit of the doubt to the Jets, and I'm going to say that they are contenders.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because like we obviously know that Rodgers didn't have a crazy great season last year. Obviously, his first time in a while playing without a true number one in Devontae. I think we can all agree that Garrett Wilson is at least capable of being a number one if he hasn't proven to be already. But another aspect that I was looking at when thinking over this is the Jets O line. I know the national media has been covering this a lot recently. Dwayne Brown is what 38, 39 and banged up at the left tackle. Mekhi Becton hasn't been able to stay on the field over at the other tackle. Vera Tucker's been banged up. So you got all these guys coming in and out. Connor Williams is a decent piece over at the center spot. But that they've certainly struggled on the O line, and this is a change for Rodgers because obviously being behind the Packers O line, they develop O line very well there. Obviously David Bakhtiari, one of the best tackles in the league, so this is a big change for him too. And that receiving core outside of Garrett Wilson, I know we like to hype up what the offense is. Outside of Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis just retired the other day. That leaves you with Alan Lazard, Mecole Hardman, and Randall Cobb. So, I mean, I don't know how Denzel Mims, I guess, is still somehow on
Yeah.
the team. So it's like, what are we looking at receiver wise? Is that going to live up? They signed Dalvin Cook, but he's hurt right now. Breece Hall obviously coming off the injury. So a lot of the things that we're going to have to examine. Maybe this is bias speaking, but I am going to say pretenders as far as the Jets go because I think there's too many teams ahead of them right now.
I will say that, but I will say one thing to look forward to in this Jets season that could really make or break it will be the run game.
Yeah, I
Aaron
agree.
Rodgers, obviously known for his, marvelous play actions and, the fake handoffs and everything like that. If they can get a solid run game going, if they can take pressure off of Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, 30, 40 times a game, because, let's be real here. Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old.
Yeah, I mean,
You
he's
know,
up there.
we don't want to discredit his abilities. He's one of the most talented players we've ever seen enter the NFL, with the ball fakes, the pump fakes, obviously the fake handoffs and things like that. I think the run game could come up really big for them if they can stay healthy and if they find a healthy balance.
I agree. And the Jets, that's going to be a debate all season. Every week, they're going to be the most talked about team. It's a mixture of Rodgers and the fact that you're in that New York media market. So every day they'll be getting talked about. And, that schedule, I don't know if you've seen it, but a rough start to the year. You go through the Bills on opening day, the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Broncos in week 5. So you could very well be 0-5 through 5 weeks if that Broncos game does not
Exactly.
go your way. So, I mean, things are going to get really interesting for the Jets to start the year. But
Really quickly.
with that being said, we'll do 2 here, just to go through it a little quicker. The Ravens and the Steelers, both of them, and 2 very intriguing teams, especially through the preseason. What are your thoughts?
To keep it short and concise, I just did my fantasy football league draft. I made sure to pick up, I think is probably either the second or even the best stack in the game between quarterbacks and tight ends. I made sure to grab Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I feel you on
Um,
that.
I think that, a fully healthy Lamar and a new contract Lamar as well. He just became one of the highest paid players in the league. I think as well with the new OC that they did just pick up, I think that the offense is more tailored around Lamar. I think that they can seriously be pretenders. I mean, contenders, actually. However, I do want to say that it's going to be a rough year for them. Obviously, they play in a tough division, having to go up against Cincinnati, having to go up against Pittsburgh.
Even
And I
Cleveland.
believe, who's the last team in that division
Cleveland,
again?
Cleveland.
Cleveland, yes, as well as a very talented Cleveland team. Obviously headed by Deshaun Watson now. But I will go ahead and say that they are contenders, but that's going to be a team that can very easily slip into the pretenders
Yeah,
kind of
I agree.
category if they lose a couple games. The Steelers, on the other hand, I don't see the Steelers having a chance at the championship. However, we'll get into this more later. I think that the Steelers have a lot of pressure on them this year, especially Kenny Pickett. We saw kind of an underwhelming rookie season from him, but we did see progression from skilled players like George Pickens, who kind of had a good rookie season, kind of solidified himself as a good rookie wide receiver last year. So we'll see the progression that we can get from him, but to keep it short,
Yeah.
pretenders for sure.
I agree. I think the Ravens are going to be interesting just because, their injury history, Lamar coming off contract, improved weapons make, them an appealing pick. But you're right, that division is going to be a struggle. I'm right there with you on the Steelers, though. George Pickens obviously looks like he's blossoming before our eyes. Steelers have a thing for finding receivers talent. But Pickett looks like he's progressing a bit as well, which is promising for the Steelers. As the year goes on, obviously you put him in right away. He's not going to be great, but as the year went on, he progressed. That's what matters. And I think this is a promising year for them. For now, I'm not going to say the Steelers are contenders or anything. I'm going to say pretenders for the Steelers. And the Ravens, I want to say contenders, but there's just so much in front of them that for now I'm going to say they are pretenders as well. Next, we've got our team, obviously, the Dolphins. We both might be a little biased here, but what do you think?
The Dolphins made a huge acquisition this offseason, picking up, arguably the best cornerback in the league, Jalen Ramsey. However, sadly enough, we did see him suffer an injury in training camp, which will keep him out until the second half of the season. However, I think that, despite anything that the Dolphins could have done this offseason, they already had everything they needed. They already have the skill players. They have a decent offensive line. They have a good defense that can bring them to a championship. However, the number one thing that will make or break the season is Tua Tagovailoa's and his injury history. If Tua can stay on the field, we've seen what he's able to do. We've seen the chemistry that he has with the guys, especially Jalen Waddle. Now he's got a whole year under his belt with Tyreek Hill. This is a good team. This is actually a great team. It's a well-coached team by Mike McDaniel. However, everything lies on Tua. If Tua's healthy, they are for sure a contender in the AFC. However, if Tua is not healthy or does miss a couple games, you can go ahead and say so long to this season again, Dolphin fans.
Agreed. Even with Mike White backing up, it still doesn't make me feel too much better about it. Tua's health is, of course, the key factor. The O-line play and Teron Armstead's health, as well as the rest of them. We probably could use another piece or two there, but I do like the O-line. You're right. Offensively, I don't think we have anything to worry about. Maybe the run game needs to improve a little, but I think the two guys working together is good. Defensively, it's where it's at, though. We got guys coming back. Obviously, we saw the sudden retirement of Byron Jones, who had to be replaced by Jalen Ramsey, which is great, but we do need him to get back. Other guys returning, like Emmanuel Ogbah on the line. Nick Needham in the slot corner. So we've got guys coming back. We've got guys we brought in, Eli Apple for whatever that's worth. It should be an interesting team, though. I love our D-line. I hope our pass rush with Bradley Chubb can really get after it.
Yeah.
And we just need those corners to defend. I think we'll be good, though. I'm going to say contender. We'll get into this a little later in the episode. In my eyes, we are the third best team in the AFC. Could, 100% compete for second. I just don't think we're quite as good as the Chiefs. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, you have the Chiefs in number 2. Okay, we'll talk about that.
I have the Chiefs at number 1. I got the Chiefs at number 1. I don't think we're as good as the Bengals, who are my number 2. We'll obviously get into that a little more. But that's just my pick. But I agree. I think we're both right there with contenders. Maybe it's a little biased, but,
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
This should be an interesting one. How about the Broncos?
So the Broncos were another team that made a big move this offseason, and it didn't actually come from a player. This year, it came from trading for a head coach, which we normally do not see in the NFL.
However, pick, mind you, too.
I was going to say, you think, what is a coach worth? This coach was worth a first-round pick who was just retired. This guy was not coaching last year. Yeah. Okay, this guy that we're talking about is Sean Payton. Now, yes, he's won a Super Bowl. Yes, he was the head coach during Drew Brees' years in New Orleans. However, this guy's been away for the game for 1 year. This guy was criticized while Drew Brees was still there of not adapting his system to modern-day NFL. So now we're looking at a Broncos team that just committed 5 years, $245 million to an aging quarterback in Russell Wilson, who just had the worst season of his career that we have seen. Obviously, he was fantastic in Seattle. He won a Super Bowl. He was there for all the Legion of Boom. He was the head guy. He was the quarterback. He was the leader. But I think that, the age and the injuries caught up to him, especially last year. I do want to say this, though. I don't think they can be worse. I don't think that they can be worse than they were last year. Nathaniel Hackett just can't be a head coach. Clearly showed that. Had no leadership, no control over that locker room. Russ can only be better than he was. If he's any worse, then hey Denver, you're stuck with him for 3 more years.
I
I don't
mean,
know
this
what to
yeah,
tell
the
you.
extension hasn't even kicked in yet. This is still a Seattle year
Wow.
from the
So yeah,
contract. That's how
sick.
crazy that is contract wise.
Yeah, I am kind of glad, or I am very glad that we live in Miami and are
Oh
Dolphin
yeah,
fans rather than, Bronco fans.
Broncos fans.
But
Yeah,
like I said, I don't think they can be any worse. I think that the only place to go from here is up. If not, sorry, Denver, you're screwed for,
yeah.
the next however many years. Um, I won't say that they're a contender, but I will say that they could sneak into the wild card spot. They just expanded the playoff seeding a couple years ago. I think we could see Denver maybe slip in at that 7 spot in the wild card if they have a good year.
I don't think they got a good year coming. I'm seeing injuries on the offense already. That Javante's still coming back from the run game. They don't really have anybody in my eyes that's a real difference maker. Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy are both fine players, but at the end of the day, it's about all we're working with offensively. Last but not least, here for the AFC, the Chargers.
So we look at this Chargers team as a team that has, now the highest paid player in football in Justin Herbert. They have great skill positions. You can make an argument that, both of their wide receivers are top 10. They have maybe probably a top 10 running back, I would say.
Yeah, at least
They've
top
got
10.
yeah, I would say Eckler's top 10 as well. They've got Rashawn Slater coming back from injury. They've still got, good pieces around. The two things that will kill the Chargers this year is Brandon Staley, who's their head coach, and their defense. If their defense can make it so that the offense doesn't have to score 35 points a game to win, then they can win games. If Brandon Staley doesn't make dumb coaching decisions with 2 minutes left in the game, they have a chance this year. I don't want to go as far as to say that they are contenders, but they're definitely a playoff team. I like them coming out of the AFC East as a sleeper.
Yeah, I guess I fairly agree with you. I'd say if I had to rank them, they're probably my fifth spot in the AFC. I think there's teams that look better than them right now. It's just the health too, like you said it, the coaching, but the health. These guys never seem to stay healthy. Keenan Allen is getting up there and banged up. Mike Williams is great, but he's been banged up. You got rookie Quentin Johnson coming in. But what you don't really have on that offense is speed. I mean, you notice all these teams that are winning right now: Chiefs, Kadarius Toney, Valdez Scantling. They had Hardman. They had Hill. This is always speed. Bengals, Jamar Chase. You got speed. We obviously know what the Dolphins had. Don't even gotta mention it. Um, even the Jaguars now, Ridley, speed, ETN, speed. Everybody who's winning right now is putting speed on their teams. And the Chargers just don't have any of that to me. Eckler is a power back. Allen
Yeah,
is not the fastest guy. Williams is possession. Quentin Johnson, possessive receiver or possession receiver. So I had to go pretenders. It's the health, and it doesn't have anything to do with Herbert, even though we have seen him relatively plateau, even if it is a high plateau. But it more has to do with the health, the coaching, and just the lack of, like, yes, you have players, but you don't really have like offensive weapons, in my opinion, that are really game changers. You need a good mixture of speed in there, and I just don't think they have that.
could agree with that.
With that being said, well, we'll move on to the NFC. Much smaller here. It's just not as simply as loaded as the AFC. Only a couple teams here, but we know who the top dogs are. Just like I left out the Chiefs and the Bengals and the other one, we know the Niners and the Eagles will be there. Even the Cowboys, really, that was the first team I wrote down, but I think we both consider them contenders.
Yeah.
So let's just move straight then to the Giants, another NFC East team. Really good division this year if the Giants play up to what they're supposed to be. What do you think? Are they going to take the step forward and become true contenders?
Listen, I don't really got to say much about the New York Football Giants. I mean, they are not in a position to win a Super Bowl. They, do not have the talent needed to compete with the Eagles or the 49ers out of the NFC. I don't even think they have enough to compete with the Cowboys. So, I'm already naming 3 teams ahead of them. I
Yeah.
don't really want to say much other than if Saquon Barkley doesn't run for 2,000 yards, I don't even know if they can win 10 or 11 games. So I'm
Yeah,
going to
they
go out
did.
and
It's
say
not like they
full
won
blown
10
contender.
last year, so it's going to be a struggle for them.
Yeah, I mean, these teams all improved around them. We saw the Eagles draft, obviously the 49ers have a quarterback injury, but still maybe the best head coach in football besides Bill Belichick and, Mike Tomlin, guys like that. I don't see them
I
taking a
know.
step forward. I think that they peaked last year.
I agree with that. Um, Seahawks. This is an interesting team in my opinion.
So I have a little bit more written down about the Seahawks that we'll probably get into later in the pod. However, the Seahawks are an interesting team. Obviously, we saw, maybe a miracle season from Geno Smith last year.
Hmm.
We saw, they still have the good head coach. They still have good skill position players. They drafted, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is probably could be the best wide receiver out of this draft class. Um, their defense and the offensive
Who's
line.
hurt, by the way? I just missed you. Said and Smith and Jigba is hurt right now after going
Yes, I
on
did. I
after
did
getting
see that
surgery.
the other day. So I would say the two scariest parts of the team have to be the overall defense and the offensive line. Obviously, the offensive line progressed a little bit last year with some young draft picks. They just don't strike me as being a top unit in the NFC, especially, you know, in their division. They've got Aaron
Yeah,
Donald and Nick Bosa. And then, like I said, I mean, we don't even have to talk about the Eagles just because of how good they are.
right.
But I mean,
We know they're going to be
yeah,
there.
I mean, they even picked up more this offseason, drafting Jalen Carter,
Yeah, they're ridiculous with their drafting. I wanted to put them on there just so we could highlight the drafting abilities of Howie Roseman and how ridiculous this is getting. But
Hmm.
it's too stacked.
Exactly. So, the offensive line scares me, but the defense, I think, is what scares me more. I mean, obviously, you have Jamal Adams coming back, who was just cleared to start doing physical activity again. But I mean, I don't see them having a very good pass rush. I don't see them having the best linebackers. Their secondary is great, actually. I really do like their secondary, led by Tariq Woolen, Jamal Adams,
And
and
they just picked
Quandre
up
Diggs.
Witherspoon, right, with their
Yes,
other
and
pick in the
Witherspoon with the
top
fifth
10.
overall
So,
pick. I don't see them competing with the top dogs, so I have to say
yeah,
pretender. But I will say that they are an exciting football team to watch. I root for Geno because he didn't write back.
yeah, I'm kind of in the same spot with you there. I mean, I really like the secondary. Of course, you're right. Tariq, Witherspoon, Jamal, all these guys that they've put back there. But the pass rush is interesting. I don't really know what they've got up there. The O line, how good is that gonna be? And of course, the biggest question is Geno in the second year with Pete Carroll. Is he gonna replicate last year, or are we gonna see kind of a regression to the mean of sorts? We know the offensive weapons are there, especially if Njigba lives up to his potential and what he's been billed to be. And Kenneth Walker is there. I think Rashad Penny's still on the team. I could be wrong. I would have to get fact check on that. But
Rashad
uh,
Penny did move over to the Eagles this offseason.
okay, so I was wrong. But they still do have Kenneth Walker there. Like they've got guys on the offense. It's going to be the defense that everyone's concerned about. I'm going to say pretenders and play it safe, but they are quite an intriguing team. I think by the end of the season, I could very well be proved wrong on that, and they could be contending for that. Well, obviously not third seed because I think the Niners will win the division, but the top wild card spot.
Yeah.
And then we've got two more here for you, or three more actually. This is a team that everyone is getting on this hype train early, the Lions.
I love the Lions personally. If I had to really claim an NFC team, I would honestly probably claim the Eagles. Not to be, kind of like a bandwagoner, but just because I've always cheered for Jalen Hurts, since he was at Alabama, then moving over to Oklahoma, now in the league. However, if I had to do somebody besides Jalen Hurts, it would be the Lions. I mean, how do you not cheer for this team? This is a team that was so bad just a couple years ago. They bring in the fiery, head coach with so much spirit, Dan Campbell. They showed so much progression last year. I mean, we are watching the Jared Goff kind of like revenge arc kind of come
Yep.
back. The Rams gave up on me. People forget this was a number one overall pick.
Yeah.
Like Jared Goff was the number one overall pick. He made a Super Bowl. Obviously, he lost to Tom Brady's Patriots, but this was a number one overall pick, and everybody wrote him off like he was trash after just a few years.
Mhm.
I love watching that. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I personally love Jamison Williams as well.
Me too. I like all of them.
Um, I will say though that this team is still kind of like what I said, throwing it back to the Jaguars. This team is still a couple years away. If they keep this core together, if Jared Goff keeps coming on like this revenge tour, they're not going to compete, for a championship, but they can compete to win the division because I don't think that the Vikings are all that. So you could see them in the playoffs. You could see them as a wild card, or as winning the division. However, they're not close enough to winning a Super Bowl yet, so not enough hope for that at the moment.
Yeah, I see no reason why they shouldn't win the division this year. I mean, I'm not even gonna put the Bears on this list because we know I personally think they're not gonna be that good. I don't know what you think. People are starting to hype them up, the Justin Fields hype train. I get it. You got DJ Moore. I put him on like all my fantasy teams, but still, I don't think you're gonna be much. I love the Lions though. I mean, I'm not riding them the way a lot of people are, but I think they're great. Drafting Jahmyr Gibbs was interesting, but he's quickly become a fantasy favorite. So I mean, maybe there's something there. I agree. Probably the Jaguars of the NFC, just a year or two away, but they're gonna be a great watch.
Exactly.
And next we've got a team looking to bounce back, the Rams.
I don't think that there's much to say here about the Rams. I mean, I think that we've already seen their peak, and their peak was a Super Bowl win. So
Which is
you got to
fine.
give them their flowers.
Yeah.
Say again.
And that's. I mean, you can live with that if your peak is.
Yeah,
Even if it ends quick.
I mean, we see that all the time in the NBA world. You trade for an old star that gets you over the hump, and then you gave up your assets for the future, and that's exactly what they did. They traded multiple first round picks to pick up certain players. Obviously during their golden year, they got they had Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp. They even acquired OBJ. They had Robert Woods. They had Van Jefferson. While a couple of those guys I named are still on the team, a couple of them are also off the team. And, Matthew Stafford is older. Cooper Kupp is older. Aaron Donald is getting up there in age. We've seen a lot of stuff this offseason, not so much about the Rams bouncing back, but what feels kind of like calling a quits. We've seen Sean McVay debate retirement. We've seen Aaron Donald debate retirement. This team could bounce back to a 7-9 season.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a break-even year, but they're not competing. Not in my book.
Yeah, agreed. I don't even really have much to input there. I kind of agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
And we'll end with the Saints.
So obviously every division needs a winner, because they need somebody to make the playoffs. That's the Saints, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically.
that's it. If you're a Saints fan, hoorah, you got Derek Carr. Congratulations. Hopefully he'll take you to a first-round playoff exit. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I agree there, which I think they will win their division if I had to pick. And we'll probably do that a different time when we go through and we'll pick our division winners. But yeah, it's got to be them. I do think the roster is somewhat interesting with Olave, Michael Thomas returning. Maybe you have receivers. Camaro will get off that suspension eventually, and your defense is what it is. So I think they're they're a decent team. You're right. Win the division, first round exits seems about what we're heading for here.
Yep.
And that wraps up our contenders pretenders little segment. That was a long one, but that was really the primary purpose of a preseason special. Break down who we think is going to be good, going to be bad. Now that we've kind of gone over our contenders and whatnot, let's move to our sleepers. This is quick. We're basically just going to both name one per conference. Alex, if you want to just tell us your AFC and NFC sleeper teams.
I'm going to go ahead and maybe not say the biggest sleeper that you've ever heard, but a team that's not getting talked about enough. The Cleveland Browns obviously had an interesting offseason. They acquired Elijah Moore from the New York Jets. Obviously he's not going to play with Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to play with Deshaun Watson. Obviously we saw Deshaun miss an entire season because of, all the stuff that was going on with him that I'm not going to name.
Yeah.
But now Deshaun has been there for, 2 years now. Obviously, he played toward the later half of last year. He's going to have a full offseason with these guys. He's going to go into a brand new year. If Deshaun can return to Houston form, these guys are Super Bowl contenders. I mean, who are we kidding? Good defense, good offense, and Deshaun Watson. I'll take a Browns Super Bowl bid.
Yeah, I could agree with that. You're right. It does hinge on Deshaun. And then who do you got in the NFC?
So in the NFC, I am also going to give a team that we have not talked about yet.
Oh, wow.
Which is a little bit interesting. I'm going to go with my sleeper playoff team as the new ownership Washington Commanders.
I was waiting for that. I was hoping someone I talked to bring up the Commanders because they are definitely high on my favorite teams list. Tell me why you think they're a contender or a sleeper contender, sorry.
So I'm going to say that the Commanders are a sleeper contender because, these guys have a new OC in Eric Bieniemy, who is obviously a multi-time Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs. You could say whatever you want about, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid. This guy played a part. You cannot tell anybody that he didn't. You can't ask any player on the Chiefs over the last couple of years that this guy just sat in the background and did nothing. So now he's on a new team. He's got good skill position players in Scary Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. guys that he can work with to tailor to his offense. However, the biggest question mark on his team is quarterback. Obviously, Sam Howell, coming out of college a few years ago before his draft year, was one of the top prospects some analysts had ever seen coming out of UNC. In his junior year, he took a major step back. Obviously, some of his best skill position players went into the draft, so he suffered a little bit. But we also saw something from Sam Howell that we didn't see in college, and that was his ability to run. On that UNC team, he had a 1,000-yard running back rusher, but he was a number 2 rusher with 800 yards and 11 touchdowns. So this kid can play. If he can extend plays with his legs, if he can throw the ball, as we have seen him do in the past in college, this guy is the sole heart and leader of this team. Washington may excite some people, bro. I'm just saying, that NFC is more open.
That would definitely be interesting. Yeah, I can agree with that. I'll be quick with mine. As far as my sleepers in my AFC, it's a generic pick. Obviously, to me, they're not a sleeper, but to the betting world, they are because they're not even in the top 5 bets. The Miami Dolphins in the AFC, like I said, I think we're the 3rd best team. Could very well be the 2nd. I think we're going to shock some people this year with a healthy Tua. And over in the NFC, actually, the team we were just talking about, I think the Saints. Like I said, that roster has definitely got some names on it if you look around, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The Cam Jordans, Tyrann Matthews of the world, Marshawn Lattimore. So I think they could very well make some noise if they slip into the playoffs. But yeah, those are my sleeper teams. Those are Alex's sleeper teams. And this is real quick, just rapid fire name. One team that you in the entire NFL that you think is going to implode this year and just have a total destruction of a season.
The Buffalo Bills.
That's a good one. That was who I was thinking about putting. I said, we'll stick in New York. I said the New York Jets are just going to implode. Rodgers is going to fall off the cliff. The O-line banged up, all that. So, yeah, I think those are 2 very interesting picks. I like the Bills pick. And speaking of an implosion, similar to that, who's under pressure this year? If you can just name me 5, either players or teams, just give me a list of 5 that you think are under the most pressure coming into this football season.
So this one was really hard for me, and obviously I know that I have been talking a lot, so I don't want to take up too much time with this. However, I will give you my list. I do include 3 honorable mentions. My 3 honorable mentions to start off has to be Tua Tagovailoa on the Miami Dolphins and his health. Jalen Hurts coming off of a super mega contract extension this offseason. And first-year starter out in the cheese world, Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers. Those are my honorable mentions. I'm going to go from 5 to 1 here on my teams that are most under pressure. The first one that I got to go with is Ron Rivera, head coach of the Washington Commanders. Obviously, this team is under new management. They've only made the playoffs once under his tenure, and that was with a losing record. If he can't figure this team out, if he can't recontrol that locker room and show some progression, he's out of there. The second guy I got to go with on this list, with my 4th spot, I got to go with Dak Prescott. At this point next year, we could see Dak Prescott become the highest paid player in NFL history with an extension from Jerry Jones in his Cowboy world. However, if we don't see him, make it to the NFC Championship or have one of those, 4,400-yard, 30-plus touchdown seasons, Dak could be on the outs in Jerry world, and we could be looking for a new guy out there. The third team that I'm going to go with, for my 3 spot, is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one's a little bit more of an interesting one. I just think that Kenny Pickett is under a lot of pressure. If he's good, then he's going to be the quarterback for the future. If he's bad, we could see Caleb Williams there next year, and that would be a great spot for Caleb to step into. That just kind of saying it like that because they could be, a sneaky playoff team, or they could just be worst of the worst in competing for a generational QB talent. In my number 2 spot, you could interchange this one with 1 and 2. However, here I got to go Denver Broncos. I think that they just invested so much of their future and so much of their assets into really 2 guys, Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. If those guys don't work out for the team, they're screwed for the future. It's just as easy as I can say it. They're just no picks, no money. What can you do? They need those guys to be better, and they need those guys to be good for them this year. And the number 1 spot, I'm pretty sure you named this as your implode team. I got to go with the New York Jets. They've been talked about the whole offseason. If the New York Jets are bad, you won't stop hearing about it. If they're good, you also won't stop hearing about it. So, with that type of pressure, with that type of floor and ceiling that they have right now being so wide from each other, that's a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure for me.
I agree, and we did have two similarities on that list. I also had the Jets at my one, and I had the Broncos a little lower, but definitely up there. So that's a great list. I agree with all those. Nothing on there really stood out to me. So with that being said, that's under pressure. It's gonna be a year with a lot of storylines and narratives and a lot of pressure going around, split on a lot of people. So as we move into our last segment here, wrap up the show. I just want you to name your two AFC and NFC championship matchups. Predict the winners, and then tell me who's gonna win that Super Bowl matchup in your eyes. Obviously, this will change
So,
throughout the season.
exactly. So obviously we see changes throughout the season. We see injuries, we see the trade deadline, we just see regular trades happen. However, I still am going to kind of keep it consistent here with 3 out of the 4, but my fourth team may surprise you. So, for my NFC, I'm just going to run it back the same thing as last year. Eagles 49ers, these are the two best far and away teams in the NFC in my eyes. The Eagles, they're stacked as they are. They got so much better this offseason. Obviously, another year with Jalen Hurts and, Steve, what's their head coach's name again?
Nick
Oh, Nick
Sirianni.
Sirianni. Yes, Nick Sirianni. These guys were amazing last year. I expect them to repeat it this year. In terms of the 49ers, the 49ers are a lot closer to the Eagles than a lot of people think. I mean, skill players, defense, offensive line, all these things, they're amazing. The problem with the 49ers is the quarterback. Obviously, Brock Purdy got injured last year and he missed basically the entire offseason due to surgeries and rehab. Who's going to start for these guys day one? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Will we see a trade? Will we see, magic healing powers for Brock Purdy and he suits up week one?
Well, he played already.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, Purdy was in the preseason, and they named him the starter. But whether he's
Okay,
starting at the end of the year, health-wise, is something that we always have to think about.
exactly. So I'll say if Purdy's available, I think that these guys make it back to the NFC Championship, depending on who's there at the end of the year. I hope they make the NFC Championship, so I'm right. But I think that the Eagles will still come away with it, and they're going to go to back-to-back Super Bowls because this team is just so loaded with talent. Over in the AFC side, this is where my little bit of a surpriser team comes in. I'm going with the obvious pick, the Chiefs, but then I have them going up against the Baltimore Ravens.
Wow. Okay.
I think that the Ravens really can be the second best team in the AFC. I really like the Dolphins. I really like Cincinnati. The Bills are the Bills. Josh Allen doesn't really play super well in the playoffs, so until I see it from him, I'm not going to bet on him. I think that Cincinnati probably has the best chance of going back to the AFC Championship to go up against the Chiefs. But something just rubs me the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, something's just, not the same out there in Cincinnati this offseason. I've been watching the preseason practices and I've been watching, training camps and stuff, and it looks like a little bit of that continuity is gone between some of the guys. And, they lost a couple pieces. I don't know. I think that they could do it, but I don't know if they will. The Dolphins, as much as I want to say, be biased and stuff like that, so much depends on the health. And, I just don't want to have to bet on, somebody's health to make it this far. And you could say that the Ravens are the exact same situation with Lamar Jackson. But Lamar hasn't suffered, the craziest injuries throughout his career and also not the most often. I like him on a new contract. I like him motivated. I like him with the new OC. Actually, let me stop saying I like. I love Zay Flowers. I love
I
that
agree.
pickup for
He's been
them.
he's been a hot pickup. I just got him in fantasy because I've heard so much about him.
Exactly. I love Zay Flowers. I'm okay with the OBJ pickup. I love Mark Andrews. This team's going to be exciting. Give me the Ravens and the Eagles in the Super Bowl this year, baby. I got the Ravens upsetting the Chiefs. Book it right now.
Wow. It's booked. I just booked that. And then who do you
Yeah.
have winning that matchup in the Super Bowl?
Ravens, Eagles. You're putting me against my sleeper pick and my favorite player, probably in the NFL right now, with Jalen Hurts. If the Eagles make it that far, they're not blowing it a second time. Let me just say that.
That's
I
fair.
got the Eagles.
Yes, so in the championship window, I'm kind of similar to you. I've got three of the four teams. I got a 49ers Eagles matchup over there. Obviously, stuff can happen, but the NFC looks a bit solidified right now. In the AFC, I got the Chiefs, and then you weren't bold enough to follow through on your bias. I will be bold enough to follow through on my bias. The Miami Dolphins will be in the AFC Championship competing against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
However, they will not pull it off, and the Chiefs will get the victory, and they will face the 49ers in the Super Bowl. The 49ers
Oh,
play the Eagles with a real quarterback this time instead of Josh Johnson and Christian McCaffrey at quarterback. So I think Purdy gets the job done. I think Mahomes gets it done again, and we get a rematch of that 2019 Super Bowl between the Niners and the Chiefs. I hate picking teams to go back to back. It almost never actually it really just never happens. But I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pick the Chiefs because if anyone can do it, it is this man, Patrick Mahomes. We saw him do it in a rebuilding year where they have a record number of rookies on the field, no weapons. You got rid of Tyreek Hill. Now we're gonna see him do it with developed rookies, developed young talent. Travis Kelce, Andy Reid. I think the Chiefs are gonna go back to back preseason, and it's my pick right now, and they will beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl.
exactly. That's a good one. I like that.
We'll see. We'll obviously revisit this during the year. Is there anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I think I'm good. I just want to thank you for having me on today, Sam. It was a lot of
Anytime.
fun. You know me and you could talk sports for hours. So,
Yeah,
I
I mean
just
that 40
love,
minutes flew by.
yeah, hey, 40 minutes, guys. You might want to watch this in 1.5, maybe two times speed. But there was some good stuff in here. So this was a lot of fun. And I just want to say thanks for having me on today. I
Of course,
appreciate
I
it.
agree. Anytime. You're always welcome on the show. I
Thank
had fun today too. This is a great video. Obviously, we're back with season two. We want to start it off with a bang. This was a great way for me to start it off. We'll obviously be re-meeting with Alex throughout the year. We're going to get some NFL talk on because that really is the biggest part of this podcast. We did some basketball, back in the spring, and we did a lot of college football, but that's not quite back yet. NFL is here to stay, though. We love NFL over here. Alex, you're welcome on anytime.
I
And I just
appreciate
want
that.
to say
Thank
thank
you.
you to everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, notifications, all that on down below. Stay tuned. I'm going to say this every episode. Season two is coming in hot. We've got stuff on the way. So, yeah, stay tuned and peace out, guys. Until next time.